About 10 years ago, I moved out of my mom's house and into my first apartment in the city of Chicago. The place was a nice 3-bedroom on the south side of the city in a decent neighborhood near the University of Illinois. I lived with 2 roommates, Tom and Mike. Mike was a close friend of mine, while Tom was a good friend of Mike's who I hadn't met before, though we ended up getting along just fine. One night, about a month after moving in, I met up with a few friends for drinks at a bar closer to the center of the city, about 10 minutes from my place. It was a good time, and I ended up getting a little drunk before hopping in a cab at 1 o'clock in the morning and heading home. When I walked into the apartment, I noticed Tom's door was wide open, which told me he was staying at his girlfriend's place, while Mike's door was shut with the glow of his TV flickering underneath the crack. I made my way to my bedroom, flipped on my own TV, and lay down to wind down for the night. About 10 minutes later, I heard the doorbell ring. Half asleep and groggy, I woke up pretty confused since it was 1:30 in the morning, so I just ignored it. A few seconds later, it rang again, and then again shortly after that. Now, it's worth mentioning that my roommate Mike made a decent amount of side cash dealing weed to a small group of people. He was also a pretty heavy smoker himself, so the idea that he had fallen asleep while waiting on a late-night customer to show up wasn't all that far-fetched. With that in mind, I walked over to the intercom and asked who was there. A girl's voice came back and said, "It's Emma. I'm here to see Mike." Figuring my suspicions were right, I stepped out of my front door and headed down the stairs. The door leading outside our apartment building was made of tall glass panels, so you could get a pretty clear look at whoever was waiting outside. Standing there was an attractive, college-aged blonde girl with glasses, waiting patiently that I had never seen her before. But she looked completely non-threatening, and on top of the occasional weed customer, Mike also had random girls come over from time to time. Because of that, I let my guard down a little and cracked the door open. The girl repeated what she had said over the intercom just moments before. "Hi, I'm here to see Mike." I told her okay, that he was upstairs, and held the door open for her to follow me up. She grabbed the handle, and I turned around to head back up the stairs that as I was making my way up. I quickly noticed that this Emma girl wasn't following me. I glanced back over my shoulder and saw that she was still standing outside, holding the door open, but now she was staring off to her right, almost like she was waiting on someone. In that moment, a wave of dread washed over me as I realized something really bad was more than likely about to go down. I picked up my pace, heading back up to my place. After rounding the corner of the staircase, I heard the door swing hard, and then heavy footsteps pounding up the stairs behind me that I looked back over my shoulder, and what I saw absolutely shook me. A tall, lanky man with sunken eyes and greasy long hair down to his shoulders was charging up the stairs straight at me. He had on a sleeveless black t-shirt, and aside from the cheap-looking tribal tattoos crawling up his arms, I noticed he was gripping what looked like a lead pipe in his right hand. My body flooded with adrenaline. I spun around, sprinted up the rest of the stairs, bolted into my apartment, and slammed the door shut behind me. I stood there frozen, staring at the door as the man pounded on it 3 more times, shouting obscenities at me from the other side. Eventually he gave up, ran back down the stairs, and took off out the front. Meanwhile, instead of coming down to let the girl in himself, Mike had simply buzzed her up after hearing her name through the intercom, figuring she was a friend of mine. When she made it to our unit door, he opened it and let her inside. He said she seemed confused, asking for someone named Tim. Mike told her his own name, and made it clear that nobody named Tim lived there. He also mentioned that she stayed close to the entrance the entire time, and kept reaching back to hold the door open before leaving just a few minutes later. After hearing all of this, my theory is that these same 2 people had actually come by earlier in the day. Not expecting someone to just buzz them straight up, the girl made the mistake of not propping the building door open, which left her partner unable to get inside during that first attempt. Either way, we both got incredibly lucky that night. We did call the police, who showed up and took down the details of what happened. They asked if there was anyone we knew who might want to hurt us, and we told them no, which was the complete truth, since this appeared to be a totally random attack. The officers left shortly after, saying there wasn't a whole lot they could do at that point. We never saw that Emma girl or her scumbag partner ever again. Let me give you a little background before the story gets started. When I was 19 years old, I was living a pretty normal life. I had just graduated high school the year before any of this went down. I had always been a huge fan of horror, anything and everything, whether it was movies, games, jump scares, you name it, I was all about it. I never really seemed to be scared of anything, and honestly, I loved that about myself. It gave me the confidence to do things that made me look tougher in front of girls I was interested in at the time, or who were interested in me. I almost thought of it like a superpower. My friend had always talked about this REM-induced real-life nightmare called sleep paralysis. I, however, had never experienced anything like that myself. My friend Megan suffered from extreme lucid dreaming. She explained to me several times how certain triggers or outside factors could influence her dreams and shape them into either a heavenly experience full of fun and excitement, or they could just as easily turn into a bone-chilling nightmare straight out of hell. Being the light sleeper that I am, I figured there was no real chance of it ever happening to me. So I kind of just let it go in one ear and out the other. One night, Megan texted me and asked me to come over because she had just gone through another one of her so-called evil episodes due to her sleep condition. When I showed up, I found her asleep again, looking pretty peaceful. I took a seat on the stool she kept by her makeup dresser, right next to the window, and started playing a game on my phone. About 30 minutes passed, and I figured she was sleeping soundly, and it would probably be fine for me to head out, as long as I let her know I had stopped by like she asked. But suddenly, Megan woke up and started screaming. This was a different kind of scream, though. A type of scream I had never heard before, especially coming from her. It was almost muffled, mumbled. I'm not sure how else to describe it. Her eyes shot wide open, and I rushed over to her side. I asked her if she was having a bad dream. She started shaking. I grabbed hold of her to try to calm her down, but the tremors only got worse. I kept asking her what was going on, but I got nothing back. I figured this was just another one of her sleep paralysis episodes. I did my best to comfort her, and after about 30 seconds or so, she regained full control of herself, that I made sure she was okay, and then headed back home since it was almost 1 o'clock in the morning. Right as I walked through my front door, I got a very panicked text that read, "The hallucinations won't stop." I asked her to explain what she meant, but got no response. After about 30 minutes went by with nothing, I decided to head back over to her place myself. When I pulled up, I noticed the flash of red and blue lights covering her front porch and the surrounding street signs. I rushed up to the house, desperately trying to figure out what had happened. As I got closer, I could see Megan standing outside talking to one of the officers on the scene. When I walked up to her, Megan and the officer guided me over to a more private area off to the side. What they told me still sends chills down my spine to this day. Apparently, when I had gone over to Megan's that night, she wasn't actually asleep at all. She had been pretending the whole time. Because evidently, right behind me, there was a tall, skinny homeless man hiding in her closet. The police had also found a very large kitchen knife on him. The theory to this day is that Megan thought she was having one of her episodes when in reality, this very real man had been quietly creeping toward her in her own bedroom. Supposedly, when I walked into the house, it was enough to spook the man into hiding, and my presence alone was enough to keep him there. That gave Megan the window she needed to call 911 and report what was happening, which is what led to the police arriving almost immediately after I had left. Thankfully, the man was taken into custody pretty quickly. To this day, I'm still not entirely sure what to make of that night, other than the fact that I could have very easily saved her life simply by keeping her company during what I thought was just a really stressful situation. And if I had shown up any later, things could have gone in a very dark and horrifying direction. I hope I never have to go through something like that again. That would be the one thing that would finally shake my nerves without a doubt. Very few people experience something so traumatizing at a young age that it sticks with them forever. I'm one of those people. I was maybe 7 or 8 years old. My older brother and I grew up in a broken home. Our mom raised us. Our dad was a deadbeat who vanished from our lives entirely. Our mom worked 2 jobs to keep food on the table. She'd sometimes pull night shifts, and on those nights, she'd usually have our grandma come stay at the house. My brother Austin is 2 years younger than me. We were lucky enough to have our own bedrooms given the situation. We lived in a small house, but for the 3 of us, and on our mom's salary alone, it wasn't bad at all. The neighborhood we lived in wasn't the greatest, though it was a night like any other. I can't remember if it was a school night or a weekend. I don't recall the small details like that, but what I do remember is that I was in the living room with my grandma. She was watching TV, and I was playing with Legos at my Lego table. I was being noisy and making a mess because I remember my grandma kept telling me, "Alex, keep it down." Austin was already in bed. My bedtime was 9:30. Since it was probably getting close to that time, I'm guessing it was a weekend night. Otherwise, my bedtime would have been earlier. The layout of the house was pretty straightforward. The living room, dining room, and kitchen all opened up into each other. Then there was a hallway that led to the bathroom and 3 bedrooms. Our mom's bedroom was at the end of the hall. Mine was in the middle. Whenever Grandma stayed over, she'd sleep in our mom's bed. Eventually, I had to go to sleep. My grandma always turned in early too. So right after saying goodnight to me, she headed to the bathroom to brush her teeth and get ready for bed. I was never really scared of the dark or anything like that. My mom always said I was a brave kid. But that night, I woke up in the middle of the night, which was unusual for me because I was normally a really heavy sleeper that I heard something out in the hallway. Creaking in the floor. The hardwood floors in that house were always super creaky. Anytime someone walked down that hall, you'd hear every single step. I figured it was my grandma heading to the bathroom, but the creaking didn't stop. It sounded like it was moving back and forth. I climbed out of bed and went to the door to listen closer. That's when I heard whispering. I was more confused than scared at that point. I thought maybe my grandma was talking to Austin. So I opened the door and looked out into the hallway, and what I saw still haunts me to this day. There was a tall, naked, skinny woman leaning against the wall with her head buried between her arms. She was whispering something to herself. Then, like a deer in headlights, her head snapped around and she locked eyes with me. I screamed for my grandma at the top of my lungs and slammed my door shut. There was loud pounding on my door, and the woman on the other side was screaming a name. "Jeremy! Jeremy, open the door." I kept screaming as loud as I could for my grandma, and then I heard her shout from out in the hallway. What I distinctly remember was my grandma yelling, "Get the hell out of here." The woman screamed back, "Where is Jeremy?" My grandma was in her mid-60s at the time, but she was still pretty quick on her feet. She told me to keep my door locked, and somehow she managed to fend off this woman while calling the police at the exact same time. I still don't know how she pulled that off, but my grandma was one tough woman. The woman eventually left the house, still screaming for Jeremy, and after locking the front door, my grandma came in to hug both me and Austin, who was awake and crying from all the noise. We all sat huddled together until the police showed up. By then, my grandma told us to go on back to sleep. That IT turned out to be a combination of my grandma forgetting to lock one of the doors and us already living in a rough area. That woman had to be on crack or something. Seeing what I saw at such a young age really did a number on me. I couldn't sleep by myself for a long time after that. It was that incident that ultimately led to us moving out of that house not long after it happened.